A little bit about how you're going to translate your design into the graphic calculator and also what the connection is with the math that's being done here. So the first step is to really just kind of explore Desmos and recognize what's happening as we change the slope or location of an equation. So the 5 here tells it that I have a positive slope, and it's kind of a steep slope because the larger the number in front of x, the more steep the incline becomes. And then whatever's being added or subtracted is going to shift the location on the graph. So let's say in my design, I really need this line to be in the left-hand corner. So I can move it over by 10, I can move it over by 20. And so by adding things, are you noticing that it's actually moving to the left? So typically when we think about, picking up a graph and moving it, we would think if we're adding it, it might move to the right. It's actually going to move to the left here because we're shifting the intercepts. And if I want to move right, I can subtract values to get it to the right-hand side. And that has to do with us using the slope-intercept form. So if you want to move location, it's adding or subtracting that number. Let's say you want to change the steepness of the line. If I look at this line, it's a much less steep incline. This is kind of like a ramp, like if you were walking up a ramp in to get into a building. And so really work on understanding what this looks like, because if I make it negative, now it goes the other direction. And so the connection we're making here is how does the equation connect to what we're seeing visually? And that's really the piece that I want you to play around and figure out is if I make the slope negative, it's going to go the opposite direction. If I add something, it's going to move to the left. If I subtract it, it's going to move to the right. So that's really what I'm looking for you to grasp. Then I would just want you to have fun with it. So while you're creating your piece of art, we looked at the artist this week, and his art had line segments. And so sometimes, it's hard to see how does that line segment relate to something in math. Well, I can create a line segment by telling Desmos, I only want to see this line between these numbers on the x-axis. So let's say my drawing calls for a line segment that I would sketch between -4 and -2 on the x-axis. So I'm always looking at what is that x-axis coordinate. So I can literally tell Desmos, okay, I want to see from -4 to x to 0. And it's going to limit that. And now I have a line segment very similar to what we saw the artist do that I can utilize to create my picture. And then what I would do is I actually copy these so that I don't have to retype the curly brackets and all. And I can add a second line. So let's say my next line needs to have a positive slope of something like 4. And then I can just shift the values that I can see it between. And now I have this line segment. Now, depending on your image, you may want to adjust the steepness. You may want all of your lines to radiate out in a certain type of pattern. And so all of that is really for you to explore and connect. What does the equation generate on your screen? Because you're telling the computer, basically, or the programming website, the steepness of the line and the location by looking at this equation and shifting it around. So have some fun. You can also do a lot of things with color. You're able to change the color of the lines. You're able to shade things. So if you want to say this doesn't want to be blue, I can hide it. I can make it a different color. I can get into different pieces of Desmos here. I can move around. There's just a lot that's possible in Desmos. So get really creative. If you say, I really don't like this blue line, I want it to be another color, then go into the settings and shift it, and I'll post some links on how to do that. But really just have fun with creating the connection between this is the equation that I need to get this visual on my graph.